that man and go into a herd of pigs. And so Jesus gives them permission. He just says, go ahead. They go into the herd of pigs, and immediately the herd of pigs runs off the cliff or down the slope into the Sea of Galilee and drown themselves. And once word gets out, the man with the demons has been healed. The people from all over the area come to see if it's true. They hear the story about how it happened. They hear that Jesus had cast these demons out, but they're terrified, and they ask Jesus to leave because they're scared, because the demons even obey Jesus. And when they ask him to leave, Jesus and the disciples get in the boat, and they're going to go back across the lake, back across the Sea of Galilee. Can you imagine what a big deal that was for the disciples to go, we've got to get in the boat again after, do you remember what happened last night, Jesus? Can we walk? Can we get an Uber or something? Can we do something different? But they head back across the lake to Galilee where they'd come from. And our text picks up tonight. And I just want to start by pointing this out because I think this is huge. When Jesus returns to Galilee, the people welcome him. And we need to contrast these two people tonight a little bit. The Gerasenes, the people where the demon guy is, they ask Jesus to leave, but the Galileans welcome him. And the Gerasenes want Jesus gone, but some people in Galilee are really desperate for Jesus, and for them it makes all the difference in what happens to them and for them. That desperation for Jesus to come and to be a part of them and to be welcomed in makes all the difference. And we're going to see that in our story tonight. The Gerasenes are desperate for Jesus to go away, but the Galileans are desperate for Jesus to come. And because they're desperate for Jesus, their desperation ends up turning into delight. And so let's read Luke chapter 8, verses 40 through 46. It says, when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Just then a man named Jairus came. He was a leader of the synagogue. And he fell down at Jesus' feet and pleaded with him to come to his house because he had an only daughter about 12 years old, and she was dying. While Jesus was going, the crowds were nearly crushing him. A woman suffering from bleeding for 12 years who had spent all she had on doctors and yet could not be healed by any, approached from behind and touched the end of his robe, and instantly her bleeding stopped. Who touched me? Jesus asked. And when they all denied it, Peter said, Master, the crowds are hemming you in and pressing against you. Someone did touch me, said Jesus. I know that power has gone out from me. And when the woman saw that she was discovered, she came trembling and fell down before him. In the presence of all the people, she declared the reason she had touched him and how she was instantly healed. Daughter, he said to her, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. And while he was still speaking, someone came from the synagogue leader's house and said, your daughter is dead. Don't bother the teacher anymore. And when Jesus heard it, he answered him, don't be afraid. Only believe, and she will be saved. After he came to the house, he let no one enter with him except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. Everyone was crying and mourning for her, but Jesus said, stop crying. She is not dead, but asleep. And they laughed at him because they knew she was dead. So he took her by the hand and called out, child, get up. Her spirit returned, and she got up at once. And then he gave orders that she be given something to eat. Her parents were astounded, but he instructed them to tell no one what had happened. You see, in this story, there are these two people that have very little in common. Just like you have two groups of people, you have Gerasenes who are not Jewish. They're outside of the people of God. They live a life that is much different than God's people. And then you have the Galileans, who are kind of the poor peasant people, the kind of the working class people of Israel. Well, just like you have those two groups of people, you have two very distinct people in this story. You have Jairus and this woman. And I know Pastor Josh talked a little bit about this not too long ago, and if you didn't get a chance to hear a sermon, I'll encourage you to hop on our YouTube page. I believe it's on there. He was talking about, it was at the beginning of the summer, he was talking about the fact that men and women have equal dignity in God's family, and so Christianity is not kind of this sexist, misogynistic faith, the way that much of the world accuses us. But we're not going to go into a lot of the details that Pastor Josh talked about, but we're going to talk about a little bit about this woman, about this man, about the things that were so different about them. In Jairus, you have this noble religious leader. Jairus is educated. To be a leader of the synagogue meant that he was educated. It also means he's respected. He's held in very, very high esteem in his culture. He has some wealth. He has a family. He has servants. He has power. He has influence. He's an important part of their religious system. He's a guy who people would notice. They would think that this is a guy who matters deeply. He would be someone that people really look up to. And then on the other hand, you got Jairus, but over here you've got this bankrupt, outcast woman. Unlike Jairus, she's probably not super educated because girls in that day didn't receive as much education as boys. And as a religious leader, Jairus had extra education that other men wouldn't have had. And so you have a big difference there. The woman is religiously unclean according to Jewish law, so she's an outcast. This bleeding is a menstrual issue, so she was considered unclean, just like those Gentiles over across the lake would have been considered unclean and unworthy of God and unable to worship God. So where Jairus is a central figure in Jewish life, you have this woman who is a religious outcast. Nothing is said about her family. Maybe she had a family, maybe she didn't. But one thing we do know is that she spent all of her money, according to the text, on doctors trying to get rid of this issue. In this story, she's unseen, unheard, and unfelt by everyone around except for Jesus. So they couldn't be much different, but there's one thing they have in common, one thing that unites them, and that is that they both have this desperate need for Jesus. So you think about Jairus. It says that he has an only daughter. So we don't know if he has sons too, but he has a daughter, and she's 12 years old, and she was dying. Some texts say that she was at death's door. She was just like a breath away from death at every moment. And so Jesus is his only hope to do something. Someday maybe you'll have a child. And if your child is ever sick, you'll find out there's a sense of urgency that you don't feel when you're sick. Our kids have been sick a few times. They've made trips to the ER, nothing really ever major, but you can't tell a parent whose child is sick that the child's sickness is not a big deal. This is especially poignant in some ways for me as I think about this, because this girl is 12 years old. And as of tomorrow, I have a 12-year-old girl. Marley's birthday is tomorrow, so girls, if you want to make Marley feel like $1 million, just tell her happy birthday tonight. She'll really appreciate it, and I'm embarrassing her enough. But I can tell you that if my Marley was at death's door, there is nothing that I would not do to find help for her, just like Jairus was doing. One of my friends, when we had Nolan and we found out that Lindsay was pregnant again, he had a boy and a girl, a boy older, a girl younger, little blonde-headed girl named Sydney. And Les told me, he said, "You need a daughter. You need to have a daughter." And I was like, no girls. Like, I am ultra, super duper, way overboard protective. And so, when we did find out that Marley was coming, that we were having a girl, I decided I was going to build a bed on my front porch with a gun rack on it so that when boys came, I could send them on their way one way or the other. And that's just me, but Les said, you got to have a girl. They're so different. He said, everybody needs a boy and a girl. And now I understand perfectly what he was saying. Nolan is pretty much John, right? So Nolan, I was in one of our people's office here yesterday. Nate's our IT guy, and Sean, our production guy, was in there, and Nolan walked in for something, I don't know what, with his camo on and all these things, his dark hair, and his, I think he had on shorts and tennis shoes or whatever, but he left, and Sean looks at me and he goes, gosh, he's just like you. He's like cookie cutter, and he really is. He looks like me. He acts like me, except way less mature, because I'm super mature, But then there's Marley, and she is super sweet, and she got some good things from me. I don't know if you know this, but I'm just a little bit sarcastic sometimes, just a little. I know it's super shocking, but it's there. Marley is super sarcastic. She's super snarky. She's really funny. But she's just so sweet. And I cannot imagine what I would do if she was sick, if she was at death's door. You'll think about these things when you're parents, and it'll scare the crap out of you. And you'll want nothing else to do with these thoughts, but you won't be able to get them out of your head. What if something happens and Jairus is living? What if? And then on the other hand, you have this woman, some sort of menstrual illness that causes her to bleed for 12 years. Now, I think, as I read this, I just think, man, it's so ironic. You have this little girl who's 12 years old and this woman who's been bleeding for 12 years, the same amount of time that this little girl has been alive. This woman has bankrupted herself seeking treatment for this problem. She's done everything she can do. And just like Jairus, the only thing she has left to do is to turn to Jesus. They're two very different people, but they have one thing in common. And that one thing that they have in common really is the most important thing that they could ever have in common. They have this desperate need for Jesus. I don't know if you realize this or not, but we all have a desperate need for Jesus. You don't have to have a child at death's door to have a desperate need for Jesus, and you don't have to have a health issue to have a desperate need for Jesus. We all have a form of spiritual desperation. And tonight, really, that's what we're talking about, is what is this spiritual desperation, and how do we navigate this, and how do we work through this, and how do we approach this and think about this? Well, desperation, spiritual desperation, is a heart posture. So you can be physically desperate for Jesus to do something the way that these people are, and the way that countless other people have been. And maybe you've been there. Odds are you'll be there one day. If you've ever had a health scare or something, I don't know if you've ever been told, for instance, you have cancer. When I was 19, I've got this fun scar on my arm. It's sometimes people ask me what it is, and I'm like, have you ever seen Harry Potter? And they go, yeah. Is that what that is? And I say, no, it's really not. But I had a tumor in the nerve in my arm, and the first doctor I went to said that they were going to cut my arm off above my elbow. And I said, no, you're not. Just like that. No, you're not. And he's like, well, you don't understand. you almost certainly have cancer. And if we don't take your arm off, you're going to die. And I said, that's fine. I'll die with 2 arms. You're not cutting my arm off. Like, it's not happening. And so thankfully, we went to these other doctors and walked into this doctor's office. And he's like, yeah, we can take that out. It's not that big a deal. And my mom said, well, the other doctor we saw, the first doctor we saw, said it was cancer. And that doctor goes, nah, if it was cancer, he'd be dead already. And I was like, man, you are so encouraging. I really like you. Like, we're not pulling any punches. Like, if it was cancer, he'd be dead. Really? So not cancer. Good news. Not cutting my arm off? Nope. Good. Just to be sure, when they did the surgery, I told my dad before I went back, I said, no matter what they say, they are not allowed to cut my arm off. And he's like, okay, it's going to be. Dad was a nurse, like he knew about this stuff. He's like, they're not going to do that. And I said, no, you don't understand. If they cut my arm off, I'm going to pick it up with my other hand and beat you with it. Like, is this what's going to happen? And he's like, don't worry, it won't happen. If you hear things like you have cancer, it creates a sense of desperation in your life. Like, it will change the way you view God. It may make you angry. It may drive you to God. I don't know. You just be ready. Because if something like that, it doesn't have to be cancer. It can be countless different things. But whatever it is, when you have a moment come up that the rug gets pulled out from under you and you find yourself in a desperate situation, it's going to change the way you view God. And for these people, the way that they view Jesus has changed. Now, it doesn't have to be a physical reality. Spiritual desperation is a posture of our hearts. It's an attitude that we undertake, and really, it's a very biblical attitude. Desperation is this very, very biblical attitude. Like, for instance, I'll read a verse that's going to sound very familiar to you if you're helping out in our student ministry program here at FBCO, Psalm 63, verses 1 and 2. This idea of desperation comes across in Psalm 63, 1 and 2. And it's where Mariano and Aiden and Leanne have kind of drawn the theme verse for the year from, or the theme of the year for First Students is hunger. But in this passage, this is the kind of the theme passage. And I want you to hear the desperation in this. This is David talking, and he says, God, you are my God. I eagerly seek you. I thirst for you. My body faints for you in a land that is dry and desolate and without water. So I gaze on you in the sanctuary to see your strength and your glory. So imagine that you're walking through a desert. I don't know if you've been in like literal desert before, but a couple years ago, my family and I went to Death Valley. If you've never been to Death Valley, it is hot. It is flat. There's nothing that grows there. When we got there, we found out that we were told when you go, you get a tank of gas before you go in. Because the week before we went in, 2 men ran out of gas and died in Death Valley because they ran out of gas. They didn't have any air conditioning anymore, so they got out of their cars. It was like 114 degrees in the shade, and there's no shade. Like, there's some kind of bushes there, but they're about as tall as your ankle. And there's just nothing to get under or behind to find shade. These men died from the heat and sun exposure in Death Valley. And there's one gas station at Death Valley, and gas there was $10 a gallon because it's just this precious commodity. Well, if you're in a place like Death Valley, or we went to Joshua Tree National Park on that same vacation, Joshua Tree is almost as hot as Death Valley. It's just not flat. It's got these cactus trees and big rocks and all these things. But when you're in those places, it is smoldering hot. And in those places, you have to have tons and tons and tons of water. We had rented a Chevy Tahoe on that vacation, and we bought gallons and gallons and gallons of water. I am not exaggerating. I think we had at least, I think we had 10 to 15 gallons of water with us. Just gallon jugs. And then we had bottles, and we had our Yeti tumblers and all those things, water bottles and all those things. Like we're just constantly drinking water. And that's how David describes himself. Like, I'm in a desolate, dry, desert place. And that's how bad I need you. Like, I need you like I need water in that place. Or in Psalm 42, he says, as the deer pants for water brooks, so my soul pants for you, O God. It's the same image. It's a wildlife that is without water, just dying of thirst and longing for a drink. That's how we're supposed to be desperate for God. Jesus talks about it in Matthew chapter 5, verses 3 and 6, when he's talking through the Beatitudes, and he says, blessed are the poor in spirit. The poor in spirit are those people who are spiritually bankrupt and realize that they have nothing to honor themselves, no reason to be honored. They have no way to find favor with God. Jesus says those people who are poor in spirit are blessed because theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And then later in verse 6, he says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, like a deer pants for water brooks, or how we thirst for God, like our bodies long for water in a land that is dry and desolate. When we hunger and thirst for righteousness in that way, then Jesus says we will be filled. All these verses speak about an attitude of spiritual desperation, longing for God to work and move in us, to fill us, recognizing that there's nothing we have to offer. We can't buy that from God. We can't earn that from God. There's no way that we can bring that about ourselves. We have nothing to give in order to earn our salvation. We have no right to approach God without His work on our behalf. It's this biblical attitude. And it positions us to be delighted in God, because when you and I become desperate for God, then God fills us, right? Like, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they are the ones who will be filled. Not the ones who want it a little bit, but those who long for it. Those who have a desperate desire for righteousness are the ones that we will be filled. When you find your delight in God, you find your delight in something that's worth being delighted in. Unfortunately, sometimes we delight ourselves in things that are not worth being delighted in. And we find that our delight won't last. Like, many of you have found out what it's like to go out and buy your first car. You're so excited. You got your first car. This car is awesome. It's super sweet. It's everything you ever wanted and more, right? Like, it's just so great. It's so wonderful. Like, you put the right air fresheners in it. Girls, yours smell like flowers and soap and all these things. Guys, if you're like me, you want leather, like leather smell. My seats in my truck are saddle leather. They're like the same kind of leather that they make saddles out of. Like, I want my truck to smell like leather. Nothing smells better than leather. Lindsay hates it, can't stand it, but leather, I love it. But then you drive that car for a while, and you got to put new tires on it, and the new tires cost money. And you got to get maintenance done to it, and the maintenance costs money. And then you see the first spot of rust come up on your car, this beloved item in your life that you delight in so much. It has rust. And then, like what happened to me a few weeks ago, a kid hit my truck in the parking lot here at the church. Braden saw it and did not stop it, and I'm still bitter that he did not throw himself between my truck and the Jeep that hit my truck like a Secret Service agent trying to save the life of our president. But nonetheless, my truck has this big mark on the side of it and dents in it and all these things, and it's not what it used to be. I delighted in my truck. I love my truck. I still like my truck. I think it's great, but it's not worth me finding delight in And one day it's going to break down, and one day it's going to be useless. It's going to be worthless. It'll probably end up in China, recycled into some kind of steel thing. Or that relationship, that person that you looked forward so long. He looks like, or she looks like, you're just everything you ever dreamed of. They're a supermodel. They are super athlete. They're whatever they are. You just think they're the best thing ever. They smell good all the time, and they look good all the time, and just the sound of their voice brings such joy to your heart. And then they make you mad the first time. Or they break your heart the first time. Or they don't, and you get married, and you wake up next to them, and you look over at them, and you're like, man, yesterday at the wedding, you looked real good. Now, this did not happen to me with Lindsay, but it did happen to Lindsay with me. It's like, your breath stank. Like, stank breath. Like, where did that come from? What's wrong with you? Like, you'll delight in them. You'll still find some delight in them, but let's be honest. You're not always going to delight in them. You stay married for 50 years, and there'll be moments that you don't really delight in them because they're not meant to bring you delight. They're not meant to fulfill you. And we have a couple of people here who are engaged right now, and they're listening to me, and they're going, this doesn't sound good, but it's the truth. You are not meant to find your delight in people. They will let you down. You are meant to find your delight in the Lord. And when you find your delight in the Lord, and when you are fulfilled by your relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ, you have found the one thing worth delighting in. Unfortunately, we set our sights too low, and we're let down. But when we find our delight in God, we're never disappointed. When we're desperate for the Lord, we'll find delight in Him. But there are a couple of enemies of this kind of desperation, a couple of enemies of our walk with Jesus, things that will hold us back. They're these things that and especially the first one, you're going to think, well, that doesn't sound like that's that dangerous, but I'm going to make an argument for its danger, and I hope that you'll connect with that a little bit, and you'll come to believe that it's far more dangerous than what you once thought. That first enemy is comfort. So these people in our passage tonight, Jairus and this woman, experience miracles from Jesus because they've come to a point that they recognize that they have nothing to offer. They are over comfort. They're incredibly uncomfortable in their situations. They're miserable. They've come to a point where they realize that they require Jesus. Like, Jesus is not just going to make their lives better. Like, Jesus is going to give them their lives back. One of the great enemies of that kind of realization in our lives is comfort. When Jesus gave the Beatitudes, for instance, we talked about that earlier, when he said, blessed are the poor in spirit, he was talking to people who were really, 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 really poor. These are the kinds of people, and many people in the Bible fall into this category. Many of the people who would have heard Jesus and followed Jesus, many of the people who were around in that day would have identified with this. You go to work in the morning, and when you get off work that evening, they hand you your paycheck for the day. And that's what you eat on. You leave work, you go to the market, and you buy what you need. You buy your daily bread. So when Jesus prays, give us this day our daily bread, that's what it means. It's like we buy for today what we need for today because we worked today for what we need today. And if I can't work tomorrow for whatever reason, then tomorrow I don't eat. And people lived with that kind of realization. He talked to poor people, and so when he told them about being poor in spirit, they understood what he meant. We have a hard time understanding that because we're not poor. Now, I understand that many of us are at different places in our lives. So you may make more money than me, you may make less money than me, whatever. You may be poor by the standards of poverty that exists in America, but you are not poor by the standards of poverty in our world. You are, in fact, just by the fact that you live in the United States of America, you are one of the richest people on the face of the planet. That is not a political statement, it is an economic statement. Like people, the poorest people in America have more than many of the people that live around the world. If you have a roof over your head and food to eat, you are rich compared to the rest of the world. And so we have a hard time understanding what poverty is like because we're not poor. And because we don't understand poverty well, it's hard for us to understand poor in spirit. One of these days, maybe you'll be broke. Maybe you'll be, I don't know, maybe you'll be living in a box somewhere behind schnooks. I don't know. Maybe you'll be that poor. And maybe then it'll be easier for you to understand poor in spirit, but odds are you won't. Odds are one of these days you're going to live in an apartment, you're going to live in a house, you're going to have a husband or a wife, 2.5 kids. You'll get to decide which one is the 0.5. That's up to you. That's the average. People have like 2.5 kids in America, so I just like to play around. Like maybe you're like that story in the Bible. Cut them in half. You get half, you get half. I don't know, whatever. But odds are you're never going to understand economic poverty. You may have struggle, but you won't have poverty. And you'll be comfortable. When Jesus gave the Beatitudes, he was talking to people who knew what it was like to be hungry. How long have you gone without food? Like anybody, just tell me. Like what's the longest you've gone without food? 3 days? 3 days? Is that the longest? Were you hungry after 3 days?
It was during COVID. I forgot.
Oh, that doesn't count. Braden almost cried. I cry when I just think about not eating. Like, I've had to have like, I don't like to miss a meal because you never know when the next one might not come. So it's like a rule of my life. I just don't skip meals. If you ever have to fast for a medical test, like you have to have blood work done or you have to have some other medical test done, like it's usually that first day is pretty hard. And by the way, this whole thing is why the Bible tells us to fast and why the Bible tells us to tithe. It's an exercise that causes us to realize our desperation for the Lord. So we can talk about that sometime, and we probably will, but Jesus was talking to people here who truly know what it's like to get hungry, and they really know what it's like to get thirsty because they live in places where sometimes it's hard to find water and sometimes it's hard to buy food. And so they know what he's talking about. We get hungry, but most people don't know what that kind of hunger is like. Sometimes it's hard for us to recognize our need for Jesus because we don't recognize need in any other area of our lives. Like, the most desperate I think I've ever been, and this is a little bit funny, I have a really bad habit of not filling up my truck with gas when I need to. And so one day I was driving through Lebanon, or through Shiloh, and I was coming back to the church, and my low fuel light had been on like for a while. And it comes up and it's like 40 miles to empty, right? And I'm like, I'm good. 40 miles. I can drive back and forth to home quite a few times and not go 40 miles. So I'm good. I can drive like a week like that. And then it'll say 20 miles to empty, right? And then it's like, I should probably get gas in a couple of days. Then on this day, it went off again, and I looked down, and it said 0 miles to empty. Now, I don't know if you know this, but 0 miles is not very far. Okay? And I know, I've heard people say, well, you know, there's still gas in your tank when it says 0 miles. You might not want to test that theory a whole lot. So I'm driving back to church, and I'm like, where's the gas station? So I'm getting on my phone because we had not lived here very long. I didn't know Shiloh very well. I'm like, gas station. 3 miles. Okay, that's not very far. And I'm not very good at math, but I think 3 is further than 0. And that's not good. And so I'm like sweating. Like, not because it's hot, but because I don't know if I'm going to make it to the gas station. That's as desperate as I think I've ever been in my life. And that's really, really sad. But it's just true. Like that, at least that's the last time that I felt desperate. And if I don't have need any more than that, how can I understand my need for Jesus? We are so comfortable that it blinds us to our need for Jesus. Comfort is not necessarily a bad thing. Like all these things that we have, the Bible tells us if they're good things, they came from God. Like, is food a good thing? Is having food to eat a good thing? Go like this. Yes. Is having a house a good thing? Yes. Is having a vehicle to get you around a good thing? Yes. Is, I don't know, having the ability to turn on the air conditioner when it's 187 degrees like it was like 2 weeks ago, is that a good thing? Yes, it is a very good thing. These things, the Bible says, every good thing and every perfect thing is a gift from God. And if that's true, then all these comforts that we have are blessings, but they come with a danger, and that danger is that these good things can blind us to the reality of our need for the Lord. They can blind us to the reality that we are desperate for Jesus. And the second enemy of our understanding of our desperation is self-sufficiency. So it's the kind of thought that maybe it sounds like this for this woman. Well, I can go to another doctor. There's another doctor in the next town, and I'll go to them and get a second opinion. I've heard of people doing this. Like, I knew of a lady, she had been told that she had cancer by a doctor, but she believed that she'd been healed by God, and she refused to believe that she had cancer. So she didn't go. She went to another doctor and got another opinion. And this other doctor said, you have cancer. And she didn't like that because she believed she'd been healed by God. And so she decided to get another opinion, and another opinion, and another opinion. And she kept seeking opinion after opinion after opinion, when in reality what she had was cancer. She didn't need another opinion, she needed treatment. But because she refused, because she relied on self-sufficiency and her own kind of twisted understanding of what was going on in her body, she died. Sometimes we just, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a good person, and I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to read my Bible, and I'm going to go to church, and I'm going to help people, and I'm going to give money to this cause, and I'm going to give money to this cause, and I'm going to volunteer at this place, and I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to work here and work and work and work and work and work. And all that is eventually going to help me work things out with God, and I'm going to be okay. It's self-sufficiency. Or oh, it's just a fever. She'll get over it. Maybe that's how things started with Jairus. Or maybe he, like this woman, said, we'll get her to a doctor. Get the doctor. And, well, she'll get better. Give her this medicine. Give her this thing. Like we just try to go through all these things. Sometimes God has to get us to the end of ourselves and the end of our attempts to take care of it myself so that we can recognize that He has to take care of things for us. One of these like kind of cliche statements, you see it on bumper stickers and coffee cups and all kinds of other dumb places. It says this: when you hit rock bottom, you'll find out that God is the rock at the bottom. Now, I think that's true. It's not bad that that's around so much. It's just that we see it so much we don't think about it anymore. But the reality is it doesn't get much more rock bottom than it is for these people. And when they turn to Jesus, they finally find what they need. The woman's destitute. She's at the end of her finances and the end of herself. And Jairus' daughter is really, really sick. And she really actually fully dies. By the way, I heard, and we need to just look at this. I heard a guy one time say, well, she didn't really die. People just thought she was dead because Jesus said she's asleep. That's not what Jesus meant. He's using a euphemism, a phrase to communicate she's not going to stay dead. And so she really is very, very extremely dead. And everybody knows it. Even Jesus knows it. But without Jesus, this little girl stays dead. Without Jesus, the woman stays broke and cut off from everyone around her. Jairus buries his baby girl, doesn't see her again, and never gets over it. That's how it ends without Jesus. But when Jesus shows up, the Galileans welcome him in. These two people approach him in desperation. Things change. And so here tonight is a few things that I just want to hone in on as application for us tonight. Like, number one, you can make yourself desperate, or God can make you desperate. And I would highly recommend that you just make yourself desperate so you miss out on God making you desperate. There are so many examples. Saul on the road to Damascus thinks he's got it all together. Jesus shows up at a blinding light, knocks him off his donkey, makes him blind, speaks to him out of this blinding light, and brings him to the end of himself, helps him realize that he's desperate. Jonah hears God say, go to Nineveh, and Jonah decides to go the exact opposite direction, could not be further in the opposite direction, trying to go to Tarshish. And God sends a storm, and then God sends a whale or a giant fish. Jonah's in the belly of a fish for 3 days, then gets vomited out on dry land. Also, God could teach him how desperate he is for the Lord. Or the Israelites who are in captivity in Egypt, God releases them. They end up experiencing 40 years in the wilderness so that they'll learn to follow God and trust God so that He can lead them into the promised land. They have to get desperate before they can experience the delight of God's promise. You can make yourself desperate, or God will make you desperate. Make yourself desperate. Recognize your desperation and respond to Jesus. First, lay aside your pride and your position. Don't let reputation or fear of other people's opinions keep you from following Jesus. Jairus is a religious leader of the Jews. He's going to Jesus, an enemy of the religious leaders of the Jews. He doesn't care because he needs his daughter to be made well. He's desperate for Jesus regardless of what other people think or say. And push through the barriers to reach Jesus. Like this bleeding woman, don't let obstacles from the outside, the people and the distractions, don't let those keep you from pursuing Jesus. And don't let the obstacles from inside keep you from pursuing Jesus. The fear and the uncertainty or the spiritual laziness keep you from Jesus. And by the way, when we think about not caring about other people's opinions and what they think about your situation, let's think about what happens in the story in verse 47 for this woman. This jumped out to me when I read it a while ago. It's not in my notes. I really want to own in on this. When the woman saw that she was discovered, she came trembling and fell down before Jesus. And in the presence of all the people, she declared the reason she had touched him and how she was instantly healed. I don't know many girls that want to go around telling a bunch of people in a mixed group about their menstrual cycles. Frankly, I don't know many men who want to hear about that either. But this woman is so desperate for Jesus, and she cares so much more about what Jesus has done for her than what she cares about other people, that she shares the most humiliating aspect of her life in front of everyone. And it's just, she doesn't care what people think. She just wants Jesus. Next, I want you to in realizing and recognizing your desperation and responding to Jesus, believe that Jesus can only meet your needs. Only Jesus can meet your needs. Our solutions are always going to fail us, but Jesus is able to do what no one else can do. Do you really believe that Jesus can do for you what no one and no other thing will ever be able to do for you? Do you really believe that? And if you really do, then you'll trust him. And you'll remain desperate for him. And you'll keep trusting him even when it looks like it's too late. Jairus' daughter died before Jesus got there. But Jesus proved that his timing was perfect. And his timing is still perfect. Just as perfect today as it was back then. You can keep trusting Jesus even when it looks impossible, even when it looks like it's too late. And you can cling to him in your desperation. Desperation seems like and sounds like weakness, but it's really a way to be filled with strength. And until you recognize it, it really it's not becoming weak, it's just admitting that you're weak. And then when you're weak, the Bible says you could be made strong. We need to recognize our desperation and embrace that desperation and walk in and live in that desperation. And when we do, we'll find greater and greater and greater delight in our Lord. Tonight, maybe you need to embrace desperation for the first time and be saved. You need to come to a point where you understand that you need Jesus. And tonight, we want to give you that opportunity. If you've never trusted Jesus, I hope you'll trust him tonight. I hope you'll begin a relationship with Jesus tonight, a relationship that starts now and lasts forever. Trust Jesus and be saved. Maybe tonight you need to ask God to remind you how desperate you really are for him. I would encourage you, regardless of your situation, like, God, if I'm really desperate for you, will you prove it to me right now? Maybe you're having a hard time buying it. Maybe you think, John's not really that smart. And that's okay. I'm not really that smart. If you don't believe me, I'm fine with that. I don't need you to believe me. But what I'm going to ask you to do tonight is ask God to prove to you whether you really are desperate for him or not. And when he proves it, I want you to act on what he tells you you need to do. I want you to respond to him in whatever way he tells you to respond. Once he proves that you're desperate, say, all right, God, what do I do? What do I need to do? And I promise you he'll tell you. And maybe you have a hard time kind of figuring that out. I would love to talk with you and pray with you about it. I'm not that smart, but I've learned a few things along the way, and I would love to help you know how you can respond to the Lord. So whatever he's leading you to do tonight, I want to encourage you to follow him. God, we love you. We thank you for tonight. We thank you for this story about these two people who were desperate for you and how it reminds us that we really are all desperate for you, Father. Sometimes we're desperate for you physically, but we are all desperate for you spiritually. And so, God, tonight, would you help us to kind of come to terms with that desperation, to realize it where we don't, to see it where we've failed to see it in the past? Would you help us to understand that desperation? And would you help us to embrace it and not feel self-conscious or self-loathing because of it? Father, help us to understand that desperation is really just an admission of who we are. And it's an opportunity for you to fill us and to make us who you want us to be. And so, Father, we pray that you would be with us tonight and show us what you want us to do in light of your word. Help us to respond to you in whatever way you want us to. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.